Christmas Day, December 25, 2011, was meant to be a celebration of joy for the residents of Grapevine, a small, tranquil town in Texas. Instead, it unfolded as one of the darkest chapters in its history. In a home adorned with festive decorations, indistinguishable from its neighbors, police discovered 6 lifeless bodies, members of a single family. All had been shot, and among them lay another corpse, later identified as the patriarch, 56-year-old Aziz Yazdanpanah. A handgun was found beside him. The first report of the incident reached police at 11:34 a.m. A man, speaking in a calm and measured voice, stated there had been a shooting and confessed, "I killed people." This chilling declaration marked the beginning of the tragedy that had unraveled in the quiet suburb. Upon arrival, officers found the house locked from within, but the scene inside would haunt even seasoned law enforcement professionals. Aziz Yazdanpanah, dressed in a Santa Claus costume, had used the occasion of the holiday to gather his family together. None of those present likely imagined the day would end in such brutal bloodshed. Among the victims were his estranged wife, Fatma Ramzani, their daughter Nona, and their son Ali, along with other relatives. The initial hours following the tragedy were grueling for police and first responders. The house was permeated with the acrid scent of gunpowder and strewn with signs of destruction. Yet, none of the victims bore any indications of resistance, pointing to the suddenness of the attack. The Grapevine tragedy not only devastated the local community but also shocked the entire nation, evoking waves of sympathy and outrage. Questions surrounding Aziz's motives and the circumstances leading to the massacre remained unanswered at the time. While family homicides during the holidays are not uncommon in the United States, the Yazdanpanah case stood out for its sheer cruelty and premeditation. For the small town, which rarely experienced major crimes, this event was a painful reminder of the darkness that can lurk even within the closest relationships. What could drive a man, who once seemed a loving father and husband, to annihilate his own family? Aziz Yazdanpanah was born in Iran and, like many of his generation, emigrated to the United States in search of a better life. In America, he met Fatma Ramzani, also of Iranian descent, and their seemingly harmonious union became the foundation for their new life in Texas. The couple had 2 children, Nona, a promising young woman, and Ali, a cheerful and spirited boy. The Yazdanpanah family embodied the archetype of immigrant families striving to preserve their cultural heritage while adapting to a new environment. Aziz worked in real estate, endeavoring to provide a comfortable life for his family, while Fatma devoted herself to raising the children and maintaining strong ties with nearby relatives. Nona excelled academically, and Ali was known for his vivacious energy. Beneath this facade of stability, however, cracks began to form. Financial difficulties escalated, particularly during the 2008 housing market collapse, which left Aziz struggling to maintain a steady income. His inability to manage mounting debts strained his relationship with Fatma. Friends and neighbors noticed his increasing withdrawal and irritability. In 2010, Fatma made the difficult decision to divorce Aziz, a blow he struggled to accept. She and the children moved into separate housing but attempted to maintain cordial relations for the sake of the family. Aziz, however, found the separation deeply distressing. His relationship with Fatma remained icy, and his efforts to reconnect with his children were often met with resistance. Compounded by financial instability and personal turmoil, these challenges plunged Aziz into a profound emotional crisis. Though he continued to interact with relatives, his isolation and peculiar behavior became more pronounced. In the months leading up to the tragedy, Aziz confided to friends about his despair and a sense of purposelessness. Christmas 2011 offered Aziz the chance to reunite the family under one roof. Fatma, eager to preserve the holiday spirit for their children, agreed to his invitation. None suspected that behind this gesture of reconciliation lay sinister intentions. Aziz Yazdanpanah was a man of complexities and contradictions. Those who knew him described him as hardworking but introverted, a man who avoided discussing his feelings. Outwardly, he appeared to be a devoted father and husband, yet bitterness over his failures festered within. Control was a defining trait of Aziz's personality. As the head of his family, he saw himself as responsible for their well-being. Losing financial stability shattered his self-esteem, leaving him feeling like a failure. The divorce not only severed his bond with Fatma but also deepened his sense of losing control over his children's lives. Colleagues and friends recalled his efforts to project an image of resilience, even as his fortunes declined. He oscillated between moments of feigned optimism and episodes of irritability and gloom. Rarely did he share his inner struggles, rendering his actions unpredictable. Some who knew him suspected he suffered from depression, yet he never sought professional help. Jealousy was another shadowy facet of Aziz's character. Despite the divorce, he clung to the hope of reuniting the family, often in ways that seemed obsessive and invasive. He reportedly surveilled Fatma, suspecting she had begun seeing another man. Nona, then 19, confided in friends that her father sometimes spoke disparagingly about her mother, questioning her decisions. Nona, a college student, was perhaps the most significant figure in Aziz's life. Vibrant and ambitious, she had grand plans for the future. Yet, her relationship with her father was fraught with tension. She resisted his attempts to control her life, leading to frequent clashes. Ali, the younger child, also felt the weight of his father's expectations but generally avoided direct confrontations. Aziz's financial troubles deepened as his debts mounted. His professional reputation had suffered, and his attempts to secure new employment proved unsuccessful. Creditors demanded payment, and the family's savings were exhausted. This financial collapse exacerbated his feelings of isolation and helplessness. In the days leading up to the tragedy, Aziz exhibited no obvious signs of his impending actions. His demeanor betrayed nothing that might alarm those around him. Yet, it seems likely that by this time, he had resolved to carry out the horrific act he considered his only escape. The morning of December 25, 2011, began as a celebration for the Yazdanpanah family. Relatives gathered at the house for a festive breakfast. The table was adorned with holiday-themed dishes, children delighted in their presence, and the adults discussed plans for the future. Aziz joined the festivities dressed as Santa Claus. On the surface, it appeared to be a gesture of reconciliation, but beneath his smile lay far darker intentions. The family had convened in a house where Aziz, Fatma, and their children once lived before the divorce. Despite the outward cheer, the atmosphere was tense. Some family members reportedly noticed Aziz behaving unusually, though no one could have anticipated the tragedy that was about to unfold. At 11:15 a.m., as the gathering was winding down, a loud crack echoed through the house. It was the first gunshot. Aziz, armed with a pistol he had acquired earlier, began firing. None of the victims had time to comprehend what was happening before it was too late. His first targets were Fatma and her sister, followed by their nephew and niece, and then his own children. With his final shot, Aziz took his own life. According to the investigation, all the victims were found in the same room, indicating that Aziz acted swiftly and methodically. Forensic reports later confirmed that there was little to no evidence of resistance, suggesting the attack caught everyone off guard. At 11:34 a.m., a 911 call was made. On the recording, a man with a calm voice later identified as Aziz said, "We're here. I killed them." The eerie composure in his voice, experts suggested, reflected a state of complete emotional detachment. The call ended abruptly, and no further attempts to contact the outside world were made. When police arrived at the house, they found the door locked from the inside. Forcing entry, they were confronted with a horrifying scene. 6 bodies lay on the living room floor, with the pistol nearby. Aziz, still dressed in a Santa Claus costume, sat among his victims. Officers described the scene as one of the most disturbing they had encountered in their careers. Neighbors were stunned upon hearing the news. Many who knew the family struggled to reconcile the Aziz they thought they knew a kind and caring man with the perpetrator of such an atrocity. Questions about his motives and the events leading to the tragedy multiplied. How could a man destroy everything he once seemed to hold dear? This day marked not only the devastating end of the Yazdanpanah family but also a grim reminder of how hidden conflicts and internal struggles can lead to catastrophic outcomes. The Grapevine tragedy captured both local and national attention. Media outlets quickly dubbed Aziz Yazdanpanah the Santa Killer, and news of the case spread worldwide. The seemingly idyllic family, living in a quiet suburb, became a haunting symbol of the devastating consequences of concealed family turmoil. Reports about the incident surfaced just hours after police confirmed the mass murder. Much of the focus centered on the Santa Claus costume Aziz wore during the crime. This grotesque detail added a chilling layer to the tragedy, turning a figure synonymous with joy and unity into an emblem of unimaginable horror. Local residents expressed their shock in interviews with reporters. Neighbors described the Yazdanpanah family as ordinary and unremarkable, though some acknowledged noticing changes in Aziz's behavior after the divorce. A close family friend remarked, "He was a devoted father, but something shifted in recent years. We knew he was going through tough times, but no one could have imagined this." The cultural context of the tragedy also became a point of discussion in the media. As an Iranian immigrant family living in America, the Yazdanpanahs had faced challenges of adaptation and financial instability. However, such explanations were met with mixed reactions. Some experts argued that attributing the incident to cultural differences oversimplified the complex web of factors leading to the massacre. The tragedy sparked an intense wave of discussions across social media platforms. Some users expressed their condolences to the family, while others questioned what could have been done to prevent such a devastating event. Debates ranged from mental health awareness to family conflict resolution and gun control laws. Many questioned who should have recognized the warning signs. Critics lamented, "The system has failed again," pointing to inadequacies in identifying individuals at risk of violence. Religious and community organizations also reacted strongly. The local mosque, occasionally attended by members of the Yazdanpanah family, organized a memorial service. Clergy members called for solidarity and support for those facing personal or financial struggles, emphasizing the importance of early recognition of depression and mental health issues. Amid the widespread attention, law enforcement and investigators worked to control the flow of information, aiming to prevent speculation and misinformation. Despite these efforts, the media and public speculated extensively on Aziz's motives. Theories ranged from financial desperation and jealousy to potential mental illness. Among the clamor of debates, one unifying thread emerged: a collective voice of compassion for the victims. Those who knew Nona, Ali, and the other family members shared fond memories, recounting their kindness, dreams, and aspirations. This helped shift focus away from the perpetrator to the lives that were lost, ensuring their legacies would not be overshadowed by the crime. The events in Grapevine served as a sobering reminder of the importance of recognizing warning signs in loved ones and providing support to those in crisis. Yet, for many, the lingering question remained: why had no one been able to stop this tragedy? The inquiry into the Yazdanpanah family tragedy began immediately after police confirmed the mass murder. Investigators faced the dual challenge of gathering evidence and unraveling the psychological and circumstantial factors that led to such a horrific outcome. The house where the murders occurred was thoroughly examined. Police found the pistol Aziz used beside his body. Records revealed that he had obtained the weapon illegally after financial difficulties prevented him from passing standard background checks. The gun was fully loaded at the time of the crime, indicating premeditation. No signs of struggle were found, underscoring the suddenness of the attack. An empty bottle of antidepressants discovered at the scene lent weight to the theory that Aziz was grappling with severe depression. Notes found among his belongings expressed deep despair. In them, Aziz lamented his perceived failures in life and his family, referring to himself as a lost man. These writings became key evidence in understanding his state of mind. Interviews with friends and family shed further light on the dynamics that preceded the tragedy. Fatma, Aziz's ex-wife, had reportedly confided to others about his obsessive efforts to reunite the family, despite her reluctance. Nona had told friends she felt pressured by her father, who struggled to accept her independence and decisions as she transitioned into adulthood. Financial struggles also emerged as a potential catalyst. Aziz had lost his home, his business, and his savings. At the time of the incident, his debts exceeded $50,000, and he saw no viable way to recover. His failed attempts to find new work compounded his sense of hopelessness. Psychologists consulted during the investigation concluded that Aziz was likely suffering from stress-induced psychological disorders. His decision to reunite the family for Christmas, donning a Santa Claus costume, might have been a desperate attempt to restore a semblance of control and unity. When this effort failed, he seemingly viewed the murders as a twisted form of escape, leaving behind irreversible devastation. The 911 call placed by Aziz provided a chilling insight into his mindset. Analysts noted the calmness in his voice, which they interpreted as a sign of emotional burnout and detachment from reality. By early 2012, the investigation concluded that Aziz Yazdanpanah had acted alone. Authorities described the event as a meticulously planned act rooted in personal and psychological turmoil. In closing the case, they underscored the importance of addressing mental health issues and preventing domestic conflicts. Despite the official conclusion, many questions remained unanswered. Could this tragedy have been averted? Were there missed opportunities to recognize the warning signs? These unresolved issues continued to trouble the family's friends and the community at large. To understand what drove Aziz Yazdanpanah to commit such a heinous act, investigators and experts constructed a psychological profile. This analysis not only provided insights into his actions but also highlighted the tragedy as a broader societal issue. Aziz was a man whose identity was deeply tied to his role as the family's provider and patriarch. His self-worth hinged on being seen as a successful and dependable figure. When the financial crisis derailed his real estate career, Aziz not only lost his livelihood but also the foundation of his self-esteem. This marked the beginning of his descent into despair. The weight of financial ruin, combined with the emotional blow of his divorce, left Aziz grappling with a profound sense of failure. His inability to adapt to changing circumstances both in his professional life and his personal relationships isolated him further. Aziz's struggle to accept his children's independence, particularly Nona's, exacerbated his feelings of losing control. Her resistance to his influence deepened his frustration and alienation. For a man who valued authority and stability, these developments were intolerable. Ultimately, the Grapevine tragedy underscored the urgent need for greater awareness of mental health and the complex factors that can lead individuals to such destructive paths. While the answers may never be complete, the lessons from this devastating event serve as a call to action for families, communities, and institutions alike. The divorce from fate may ultimately shatter Aziz Yazdanpanah's fragile mental state. Losing control over his family, especially his children, whom he regarded as extensions of his own identity, left a profound emotional scar. Psychologists who analyzed his behavior suggested that Aziz might have suffered from a narcissistic personality disorder. For individuals with such tendencies, the loss of social status or respect can feel like the annihilation of their very existence. Letters found among his belongings revealed the depth of his internal crisis. In these writings, Aziz lamented his circumstances, railing against what he perceived as the injustices of life. He expressed feelings of abandonment by those he considered closest to him. These notes exposed a mixture of guilt and resentment, likely fueling his resolve to seek what he viewed as a final solution. Aziz's narcissistic traits also shaped his relationship with his children. He viewed them as reflections of his success, and their growing independence represented a direct threat to his sense of self. His strained interactions with Nona, who was determined to forge her own path, became a painful symbol of his loss of control over his life. One striking detail noted by psychologists was his choice to wear a Santa Claus costume on the day of the murders. This was not a random decision but a symbolic gesture. Aziz sought to evoke a time when he was perceived as the protector and provider of the family. It was an attempt to reclaim his role as the source of joy and unity, even as that joy became grotesquely distorted. Some experts speculated that Aziz deliberately chose this persona to stage a final, macabre performance. The analysis of the 911 call further illuminated his psychological state. His calm and measured voice reflected a chilling acceptance of his actions. This emotional detachment, often referred to as emotional numbness, is commonly observed in individuals preparing for mass violence or suicide. Aziz displayed no remorse or fear, only the grim culmination of an unresolved internal struggle. Experts concluded that Aziz likely did not view his actions as evil. In his warped perception of reality, the murders were an act of liberation for his family, sparing them from the suffering he believed his failures had caused. This mindset aligns with patterns observed in family annihilators driven by desperation. The psychological portrait of Aziz Yazdanpanah not only shed light on the motives behind his horrific actions but also underscored the critical importance of early diagnosis and intervention for mental health issues. In Aziz's case, timely help might have prevented the catastrophe. However, his reclusive tendencies and refusal to acknowledge his problems created insurmountable barriers. This tragedy serves as a poignant reminder of the need for vigilance and compassion toward those in crisis. Sometimes, even small gestures of support or understanding can avert irreversible consequences. The events that unfolded in the Yazdanpanah home left an indelible mark on the small community of Grapevine. A town known for its peaceful and close-knit atmosphere found itself thrust into the national spotlight. The tragedy not only devastated the family's neighbors but also reverberated through everyone who learned of the incident. Local residents described how the sense of security they cherished was irreparably shaken. Many questioned how such a catastrophe could have occurred unnoticed in their midst. Neighbors who had seen Aziz and his family as ordinary community members now struggled with feelings of guilt for failing to recognize the warning signs. "I thought I knew them," one neighbor said in an interview, "but clearly, I was wrong." The church and mosque the Yazdanpanah family occasionally attended became focal points for memorial services. These gatherings provided a space for collective mourning and support. Religious leaders spoke of the need for forgiveness and understanding of human suffering, though many community members admitted that forgiveness felt unattainable in the wake of such profound shock and anger. Neighbors organized a memorial at the house where the tragedy occurred. Flowers, candles, and photos of the victims served as a poignant reminder that behind the grim headlines were real people whose lives were cut tragically short. Particular attention was paid to Nona and Ollie, remembered as kind and spirited individuals. Nona was a college student aspiring to become a doctor, while Ollie was a sports enthusiast who dreamed of becoming a professional football player. Grapevine, like many small towns, was known for its tight-knit social fabric. In the aftermath of the tragedy, residents began discussing the importance of open communication and mutual support. Town hall meetings addressed ways to prevent similar incidents, including raising awareness of mental health resources, addressing domestic violence, and fostering a culture of vigilance. Psychologists and social workers brought in to assist the community noted that even those with no direct connection to the Yazdanpanah family felt a deep sense of loss. The tragedy became a stark reminder that no one is immune to the hidden conflicts that may unfold behind closed doors. This was a wake-up call for all of us to pay closer attention to those around us, said a city council representative. Schools in the area held special assemblies to talk to students about the importance of sharing their struggles with trusted adults. Teachers observed that children who knew Nona and Ollie were deeply affected by their loss. Counseling services were made available to help students process their grief and fear. The Grapevine tragedy also reignited national debates about gun control. Although the firearm used by Aziz was obtained illegally, the incident prompted renewed calls for stricter measures to prevent such events. However, for those who lost loved ones, these discussions were just one piece of a far larger issue that could not be solved by legislation alone. This tragedy remains a haunting example of how unchecked mental health issues, family conflict, and societal pressures can converge with devastating consequences. For the community of Grapevine and beyond, it is a call to action to ensure that no warning sign goes unnoticed and no cry for help goes unheard. The Grapevine community continued its slow path to recovery, yet the pain of loss lingered. This tragedy served as a stark reminder that such events can occur anywhere, regardless of a town's size or perceived safety. Residents began to reflect on the importance of not only external well-being but also the inner emotional state of loved ones. The Yazdanpanah family tragedy left an indelible mark on the hearts of those who knew the victims. For their friends, neighbors, and colleagues, the loss was not only shocking but also a sobering reminder of the fragility of life. To honor the victims' memories, the Grapevine community organized a series of events to preserve their legacy. The day after the tragedy, an improvised memorial was erected outside the house where the murders occurred. Flowers, candles, toys, and notes of condolence were brought by neighbors and strangers alike. Many messages were addressed to Nona and Ali, whose dreams and vibrant personalities deeply touched the community. The memorial became a space for mourning and solidarity, where people could support one another through shared grief. In Nona's memory, her college friends established a scholarship fund. They described her as a determined young woman who dreamed of becoming a doctor to help others. The scholarship was created to support students pursuing medical careers, ensuring that her aspirations lived on. Her classmates often recalled how her energy and smile inspired those around her, and the fund became a way to keep her spirit alive. At Alice's school, a sports trophy was dedicated in his name. Teachers and friends remembered him as a kind and enthusiastic boy who loved football and aspired to play professionally. Since 2012, the school has hosted an annual football tournament in his honor, which has grown into a cherished tradition that brings together students, parents, and educators. In tribute to Fatma, known for her kindness and generosity, the local mosque launched a yearly charity drive. On her birthday, food and clothing were distributed to those in need, symbolizing her values and contributions to the community. The other family members lost in the tragedy were also remembered warmly. Relatives described them as people who loved gathering together and fostering a sense of warmth and connection. Family reunions became an opportunity to share stories, recall joyful moments, and express gratitude for the times they shared. On a broader scale, a commemorative bench was installed in a Grapevine park, engraved with the words, "In memory of a family whose light will never fade." This bench became a symbol of hope and a reminder of the importance of community support in times of hardship. Honoring the victims' memories became a vital step in the healing process. It reminded residents of the value of each life and the need to be attentive to loved ones. For many, this was a call to share their burdens and seek help without fear of judgment. Over time, these memorial events transformed into more than just moments of remembrance. They became symbols of renewal, urging people to cherish their relationships and address issues that might threaten family harmony. The memory of the victims continued to inspire compassion and action, particularly for those experiencing crises. More than a decade has passed since the tragedy in the Yazdanpanah home, yet its echoes are still felt in Grapevine and beyond. This event became a painful lesson that sparked discussions on family conflict, mental health, and violence prevention. The central takeaway was a heightened awareness of emotional well-being. Experts noted that Aziz Yazdanpanah suppressed his feelings, avoiding help even in his darkest moments. This is common among individuals who fear stigma or believe they must cope alone. Psychologists emphasized that open conversations about personal struggles could prevent such catastrophes. Mental health became a critical focus after the tragedy. Local authorities strengthened programs to support those in crisis. Schools introduced training sessions for students, parents, and teachers to identify signs of emotional distress. Clinics in Grapevine began offering additional free counseling services to residents. Gun control also became a key topic of discussion. While the firearm used by Aziz was obtained illegally, the case contributed to broader calls for stricter measures to curb similar incidents. Texas authorities launched initiatives to combat illegal firearms sales and educate residents about gun safety. The tragedy forced society to reevaluate its approach to family conflicts. Organizations supporting victims of domestic violence received increased funding. Special attention was given to cultural and social barriers that might prevent individuals from seeking help. In communities like Grapevine, where traditional family values are deeply ingrained, addressing these challenges became particularly relevant. For many, this story served as a poignant reminder of the importance of vigilance and empathy. Neighbors and friends admitted they had overlooked or dismissed warning signs. This realization led to educational initiatives teaching communities how to recognize crises and intervene effectively. Families who had experienced similar tragedies found both pain and lessons in the Yazdanpanah case. Documentaries and publications used this story to raise awareness about violence prevention, making it a symbol of the need for timely action when a loved one is in despair. In Grapevine, the memory of the victims lives on through memorials, charity events, and annual traditions honoring the family. Every year on the anniversary of the tragedy, residents gather to remember those lost and discuss ways to prevent such events in the future. This day has become a time not only for mourning but also for reinforcing the community's commitment to unity and resilience. The Yazdanpanah tragedy is a painful lesson with no easy answers, but one that cannot be ignored. It has shown how vital support, attention, and willingness to help are in preventing such horrors. The community continues to draw lessons from this story, hoping that one day, such tragedies will be consigned to history.